Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, May the 2nd, 2018. This is show number 1173. I'm joined, as always, by my gorgeous, lovely wife, Melissa. Hey, Melissa.
Hello, Shawn.
How you doing?
Good.
On tonight's show, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim is a pre-recorded interview with Jim. Jim is off to the San Jose Sharks, Las Vegas Golden Knights hockey game. NHL playoffs are this, which is very important to us Canadians. And so so we had to pre-record that interview earlier this afternoon. And hopefully right now his Boston Bruins are losing miserably to Tampa Bay. I hate the Bruins. But I talked to Jim about the Apple earnings report, the spectacular, amazing Apple earnings report. We talked about the usual stuff there. And we also talked about the airport base station or airports Apple has discontinued. What are your thoughts on that? We also talked about Amazon. I don't think you've heard the story. Amazon, the city of Seattle, is instituting a $500 employee tax on large companies in the city and using that tax money in order to pay to help alleviate the homeless situation in Seattle. Well, Amazon has said that if you do that, we're moving. Amazon was founded in Seattle. It is part of the city. But they're saying this would be a $75 million tax on Amazon. They're saying that if the city of Seattle goes through with this, they will leave the city of Seattle. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. We'll talk about that with the gorgeous one over here, too. We're also going to talk in our Starting Point Photography segment about, I got a question from somebody. You can always send me emails if you have any questions about photography or anything else along those lines to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. They're asking about an 18-300 lens for their DSLR. Is it logical to buy that? So we're going to talk about that in lenses in general on the Starting Point Photography segment. We've also got a little bit of an announcement. If you'd like to have a cat free of charge, we will give you our cat Wallace because we're getting rid of the little son of a bitch. In the last 2 weeks, around here, like almost literally within arm's reach, certainly within rock throwing distance, I've seen 3 lovely deer, a cute little raccoon, a terrifying bear. And in the bathroom of our home, 3 dead birds and 1 live, heavily injured bird. Our cat Wallace is a bird killer.
And one outside that morning when I went outside, he had one. His days are numbered.
What do you do, though? I mean, it's... The part of the problem is that cats are not a natural predator of birds, so birds don't know what the hell a cat is. Cats are natural predators, so they want to go after birds. And what you do is you keep your cats indoors. I've always had indoor cats. This is the first time I've ever had an outdoor cat. It's the first time I've ever dealt with this issue.
We could keep him indoors.
The problem is we want to keep the doors open in the summertime.
We have to get a screen door. See, my cat's a Disney cat. She chases butterflies. She literally does. She runs around the yard. She's this beautiful little fluffy cat, and she chases moths and butterflies.
Sherry says put a bell on them, but
no,
bells don't work.
No, they don't.
Because birds don't know what a bell is. Birds don't recognize the sound of a bell as being dangerous.
Yeah, no, it's become a real problem with him.
Scott Thrift, cats and birds, quietly hums a circle of life. Yeah, Macman says muzzle it. I've never seen a cat muzzle. Have you ever seen a cat muzzle?
Oh, no. I didn't know such a thing existed.
I've heard of dog muzzles, but not cat muzzles. The other thing I thought of was just hobbling him somehow. Like literally like making one paw, strap one paw to his chest so he could only run around on 3 legs, so he couldn't do that. Obviously, you can't do that either.
But that makes him really vulnerable, too, to be...
True. Fair point, yeah.
Yeah, no, we'll have to keep him in. We've got to keep him in.
One of the things, though, that we've noticed that he's only been doing it in the mornings. And so the idea is what we're going to do. And he only brings them in through the cat door. He doesn't bring them in through the front door. So the assumption we're going to make is that he only hunts in the mornings. So we're going to keep him inside in the mornings. Because even now, there's no birds outside here.
No.
And then... keep the cat door locked as much as we can, too. So maybe that'll stop him from bringing them in. Because he always brings them in and then into the bathroom.
Yeah, he does.
And then you go to the bathroom, there's frickin' feathers all over the bathroom.
Yeah, I had to empty the vacuum today, and it was filled with feathers. Thank you. Oh.
Scott Thrift. Hobble it? Oh, God. Now I've got images of Shawn as Kathy Bates from Misery. But I hadn't thought about it. You're right. He would be then vulnerable to other animals, to other cats and dogs.
Yeah, that makes him. Yeah, we don't want that.
But it's pissing us off.
It's
Yeah, it's.
And we had to go to the wildlife rescue, which is kind of
lovely little place.
Isn't it lovely?
We found and this is the funniest part. Melissa knows a lot about birds. Like I'll hear a bird sound and I'll say, Melissa, what's that bird? And she'll say it's a red-breasted thrush killer. I don't know. So I go in the bathroom and here's this poor bird lying there, and I scoop him up in a towel and I bring him in, and Melissa has a little basket with a blankie in it, so I put him in the blankie. We cover him up and try to keep him quiet. And Melissa says, "What kind of bird is it?" I'm like, "I don't fucking know. It's a bird. What does it look like?" It's bird shaped. It's got wings and 2 legs. I have no idea. It's got a really long beak. And
Yeah.
what do you mean it's got a long beak? That where she got confused.
I did.
But it has this really strange, very, very long beak.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to look for it online, it looked like it was a hummingbird. I mean, that's how long the beak was. It had a very long beak, but it was way too big to be a hummingbird. This would be the world's largest hummingbird.
Mm-hmm.
So we had no idea what kind of bird it was. And Melissa's like, "What color is it?" It's bird
I mean,
colored.
just to be
Brown.
clear, I didn't want to look at it because it makes just so everyone knows, I can't.
That's
So
the
I
other
go
thing,
into
too.
the SPCA, I can't go.
So eventually, when we took it to the wildlife rehab place, they said it was a snipe,
It was a snipe, unreal,
which is a shorebird around here.
a big one.
And yeah, it's probably about twice the size of a robin.
Yeah,
It's a good, solid,
Beautiful.
very long legs. It's that kind of bird you see running back and forth, the running into the waves and back out again. You know, he had one of those really long noses for poking in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And it was when we're not near the water.
Well, yeah, it's just there.
Yeah, but that's a mile away.
He might have been flying from a long way, and maybe he was resting somewhere, and
Scott Thrift has a link, how to stop cats killing birds. So check that out and see if that works.
We will have a look at that. Thank you,
DH says, hide the key to the
Scott.
cat door from Wallace. Yeah, I'm kidding. But yeah, I think that's one of the things we're going to have to do is get a screen door.
Yes.
But even then,
please.
screen door, it only allows us air. It doesn't allow the animals in and out.
Well, that's okay.
You sure?
Yeah. I mean, the last year there was a raccoon in my house, so I don't want a raccoon in my house. I'm good with this screen door.
If you guys follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you will see me post a video of Melissa chastising a raccoon.
Excuse me, raccoon, get out of my house. Excuse me.
In such a
Yes.
it was Scott Thrift. You were
Scott
so
said I was
polite,
polite.
Rick.
I know. I told Scott I'm becoming Canadian. I'm so polite. It's like that video of the Canadian saying to the bear, "It's time for you to go now, bear. Bye, bear."
That was pretty much the same sort of thing.
It's the same. I've become Canadian.
It was
like
hilarious. Scott Thrift, also in tech news. Anyone going to use Facebook dating? No. No one should use Facebook. Is going to start up its own dating app.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Aren't we all enough afraid of Facebook and how much data they have on you? You want to start using their dating app?
Whoa, I don't think so.
I mean, it's bad enough using Match and Plenty of Fish and Cupid and all that kind of stuff with the information you give them. Don't give that information to Facebook.
No.
Facebook has proven they're incapable of securing your data, keeping your data private, and not allowing advertisers access to your data. So why would you give them dating information? No.
It's an odd time for them to bring that up, considering everything that's been going on.
They're having a conference called the F8 conference.
Oh.
And this is one of the news announcements they had at the F8 conference.
Oh.
It's a conference for the developers. So, hey, this is the cool stuff we're doing in the next year.
Oh, yes, right.
But yeah, there is no chance, even if I wasn't married to this beautiful woman, of me using Facebook for any kind of dating.
No.
I use it with the minimal as it is.
Yes.
And even then, I don't like using it. It pisses me off on a regular basis. The user interface is awful. Everything about Facebook is awful. But I use it to keep in touch with those family members who use it. But if I could, I would stop using Facebook in a heartbeat.
Yes.
Without
I would
a
too.
thought, I would stop using Facebook.
I don't even really need Facebook. I don't. I don't use it hardly ever anymore.
Well, I think I use Facebook because there's family and friends who aren't on other social media platforms that I'm on. They're not on Twitter. My sister, Melanie's not on Twitter. She has a Twitter account, but she doesn't use Twitter.
Use it.
So I keep up with information about her there.
Yeah.
She doesn't use Instagram.
No.
My niece Emily uses Instagram constantly, but doesn't use Facebook. So who else? You don't use Twitter, so to keep track of you, I have to follow you on Facebook.
Oh, no, you really don't.
I know, I'm teasing. But yeah, that's pretty much the only reason I would use Facebook is to keep touch with family and friends. There's some people that I could unfollow on Facebook in a heartbeat and wouldn't care. Wouldn't make any difference to me. But
I don't actually need to, because most of my family now is on Instagram.
True.
No one really uses it. Dating on Facebook.
Yeah, dating on Facebook. Just don't do that. Later on in the Starting Point Photography segment, we're going to talk about lenses for your camera, what kind of lenses you can get, and whether you should or shouldn't buy certain lenses. But up next, we have a pre-recorded interview with our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King, recorded on our phone with our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Shawn. I'm actually, I think for the first time in maybe 5 years sober when I'm talking to you. I have to, I'm going to the Sharks playoff game tonight.
Sharks versus?
Vegas.
Oh, okay. Are you surprised by how good Vegas is doing?
I am just shocked.
Utterly shocked that they're even in the playoffs, let alone I think favored to win the Stanley frickin' Cup, which is kind of amazing.
It's outrageous to think that an expansion team in their first year, is just kind of blowing everybody away.
Does it bother you even a little bit that you are going to a San Jose, California hockey game with the Las Vegas team in two areas of the world where ice does not occur naturally?
Okay, so that's a good question. I want to answer that. I saw the crowd last night on a game on TV in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Still wearing their hats and jackets, and it's about 80 degrees here today, and there's not a cloud in the sky.
That's not right. That's not right, man.
I'm outside in a t-shirt. I've been working outside all day long.
That's not right.
And so the answer to your question is an emphatic no.
You become spoiled by California.
Well, I'm telling you, it's a beautiful, beautiful day here today. So, yeah.
But it's not a hockey day, though.
Well, it is a hockey day because I'm going to watch my Bruins before I go to the Sharks games, and then I'm going to go down and watch the Sharks game.
That Bruins Toronto series just killed me. I just couldn't hope for two teams more to lose.
Well, one of them had to win. They can't both lose.
I was trying to figure out some way for both of them to lose. Who are the Bruins playing now?
Tampa Bay.
I'm such a Tampa Bay fan.
No, see, you can't be because you've already said you wouldn't hope for anybody that lives in a place where ice can't naturally
I
formed.
know.
So that leaves Tampa.
I know.
So now you're a Bruins fan.
No. I'm just not going to watch hockey. I'm just going to stop watching.
No, you can't do that. You're Canadian. You'll be drawn to the TV whether you want to or not.
Just naturally. It's
it's like you're hypnotized. You'll just walk into a room and turn the TV on, and there's hockey, and you'll be hypnotized. You'll stay there.
The Swallows back from Capistrano. I have to actually watch hockey. Let's talk about Apple's earnings report yesterday. Apple could just basically do a 30-second earnings call that says, we're making all the money. Thanks for being here.
Yeah,
They're just making stupid amounts of cash.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy and good for them. And, for that matter, good for any company that's able to make that amount of money.
Absolutely. The problem is, once again, there's a bunch of interesting little tidbits in the report. One of the things was Apple talking about their share buyback program, where they had spent I think it's $100 million or X number of dollars buying back their own shares in the month of, particularly in March. And if you look at Apple's share price in March, it was kind of flat to down. That's really interesting because of all of these rumors of the iPhone 10 not being a very big seller, that Samsung is losing money because they're not able to make enough they made more OLED screens than Apple bought, that basically the whole market doesn't want the iPhone 10. Apple's share price kept slipping through the month of March and April, down $10, I think, over those 2 months. It would have been down more if Apple hadn't been buying back its share because of their buyback program. That's got to be really frustrating for the company.
Well, and then Apple is buying all of those shares when everybody else is selling, and then they release their financials, and people are going, damn.
How much responsibility does the media have when it comes to these kinds of rumors? That these are damaging rumors. These rumors cost Apple money. They cost Apple for arguably prestige among customers when they hear their local media or the local tech guys going, the iPhone 10's a failure, don't buy it, Apple's going to cancel it. And yet Apple, as Apple said on the call, it was the number one selling phone every week it was available, and that was the first time that ever happened to Apple.
Well, I believe, and I believe differently, I understand, than a lot of journalists, that they do have a big responsibility. And the problem with the stories that come out on the iPhone is a mess and they're going to cancel it and it's not selling, is that they're taking it from unreliable sources.
Yes.
They take it from the fact that Samsung is making less of a product that Apple uses, but Apple is not the only company that uses that product.
Yeah.
So it could be others that are causing this downward turn for Samsung. So, so I think that media has a big responsibility. I just don't think that they take it. They make wild leaps where I don't think that you can make those wild leaps. And, it's unfortunate, but that's where we live right now. That's the way that the media is.
So much of this is such a perfect example of the internet echo chamber, where one person says something and they've got unreliable sources, but everyone picks up on that one person saying that thing that they want to believe. The media wants to believe that Apple isn't a success with the iPhone because that's a sexy story for them. Apple sells lots of iPhones is not a big story. Apple failing with the iPhone is a big story. So the media, instead of using their own sources and finding out their own information, all rely on a rumor, whether that be from Mark Gurman, who's the most notorious one over the last month over at Bloomberg, whether that be Ming Cho Kwa, whoever that guy is, that everyone thinks is the greatest analyst in the world, him saying the same sorts of things, and the media running with these stories, and then it sounds like everyone's talking about this. Well, if you follow these stories back, we've talked about this many times in the show, if you follow the stories back, it all comes from one source. And our media, especially the tech media, and I don't call them journalists because they're not journalists. All they are stenographers. They're just taking stories from other places and re-reporting those stories. There's that aspect of it, but then there's the other aspect of the audience who read these stories don't hold these people to account. They also don't read these stories critically. They don't look at the story and go, okay, where's it coming from? Oh, it's this guy. And this story is coming from that guy. And this story is coming, from that guy too. All three of these stories are all coming from the same guy.
Yeah, and it's important. You can look and say, okay, well, the story about the Samsung thing isn't coming from unreliable sources.
Yeah.
It's coming from reliable sources because it's from Samsung. But that doesn't mean that it's Apple.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, you can't, even if the story is coming from a source that you can see, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has anything to do with Apple. And they make that connection for you, and then we just tend to follow it along. But if you sit back and say, wait a minute, Samsung isn't exclusive to Apple.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, there are other companies out there using these displays. So maybe that company is down. So
we get stories like, or quotes like this. Neil Cambling, an analyst with Mirabaud Securities, expects Apple to discontinue the iPhone 10. He said that after the earnings call yesterday. How does this guy still have a freaking job?
Well, you know, in September, they could come out with the iPhone 11, and he'll say, see, they discontinued the iPhone 10.
And everyone will go, oh, he's a genius. He predicted this 6 months ago. I know. It's just utterly insane. Let's look at what Apple did announce. Apple announced 50-odd million iPhones, which is really amazing when you think about, people keep talking about how the cell phone markets is the smartphone market is quote unquote mature. In other words, everyone who wants a smartphone has a smartphone. So the idea that people seem to think is that, well, Apple can't sell any more iPhones because everyone who already has one, everyone who wants one already has one. But everyone keeps ignoring the fact that the Android market is much, much larger than the iPhone market, and that's who Apple is selling iPhones to.
True.
That there's a huge market out there. Someone said that last year there were still 500 million feature phones, or flip phones, sold around the world. There's Apple's market right there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and, I mean, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Apple, in 2006, had a market when it brought out the iPhone, and it was people that basically had feature phones and BlackBerries.
Yes.
That was it.
Yeah.
You know, that was their market. And basically in 2006, it was really anybody that wants a phone, please buy ours.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
But, you know, over the years, and analysts have been saying this for years and years and years, that, the market's saturated now. And then Apple comes out and they sold even more phones. But you're absolutely right that people are ignoring this segment of the market where people had purchased cheap Samsung phones or Android type phones. And two things I think have happened in that time in the past 2 years. One is that people are, you know, getting different jobs, or some, you know, first time jobs, or leaving college, and now they can afford a more expensive phone. And I think that they tend to go to iPhone for that. The second thing that's happened is that Samsung in particular, their phones have gotten a lot more expensive.
Yes.
So even though you can get deals, you know, for Samsung phone, buy one, get 30 for free for all your friends. The main Samsung flagship model phone is pretty much as expensive as an iPhone.
Sure. Yeah.
So now people are looking at that and saying, well, if I spend that much money, maybe I should get an iPhone this time. But you're always going to have people on both sides that, as Samsung people, that will not buy an iPhone because they don't like Apple or whatever. Sure. Or people on the Apple side that will not buy an Android phone.
Yes.
So those are, you know, base customers that both sides have. But, everybody in between, I think they're fluid.
Are they really, though? I mean, I cannot imagine ever buying an Android-based phone. I like the iOS, even with the problems I have with the iPhone. I think the iPhone's hardware is really, really good, the best in the market, and for my opinion, although I've never used an Android high-end phone, in my opinion, the best I'm going to need and want. The operating system is really, really good. I'm kind of locked in with, the 8,000 camera apps that I've bought over the years. But is that true of the Android market? Is the Android market locked into? It feels like Android users are more likely to switch to iPhone than iPhone users are likely to switch to Android.
I didn't say they were locked in. I said that they were fluid, which means that they could leave Android at any time and come to iPhone.
You said iPhone users were fluid too.
I think that there's a core part of iPhone users that are absolutely locked in, but
Really?
there are still some iPhone users, depending on price, that could be fluid.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it would be reasonable to expect that everybody that's ever tried an iPhone has stuck with it.
Sure. Yeah.
So there are a certain number of users, and I think they're most likely price conscious users, that will say, okay, I can't do an iPhone this year, but I need a new phone.
Yeah.
I'll go back to an Android phone until maybe somebody lost their job or, but they still need a phone. So, but yeah, I think that there's still lots of room for Apple and everybody else to move if they keep making good products. And I don't see Apple not making a good product.
Yeah.
They're not going to come out purposely and make an iPhone 11 flip phone.
I think one of the issues that I have with people is that they assume that this word mature market means that no one's going to buy another phone ever again. I think that's what happens with people's minds. Is they think, well, no one's going to need a phone next year. No one's going to lose their phone this year. No one's going to see a feature on some other phone that you might want to buy. Yes, I've already got a phone, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to buy another one in 6 months or a year's time. And that's the market Apple's selling into. Those folks who are going to buy another phone this September or next March or whatever it might be. One of the most amazing things I saw, one of the stats I saw on Twitter, is the iPhone itself. iPhone alone generated $100 billion in revenue in the last 2 quarters for Apple. Microsoft's revenue for 2017, $90 billion. The iPhone alone in 2 quarters is bigger than all of Microsoft. If you had a time machine and went back 10 years and told me that statement, I would have had you committed to an insane asylum.
Well, now we go back 10 years and have Steve Ballmer committed.
If we had any sense, yeah. That to me is remarkable, and that statement alone makes me look at every analyst who says that the iPhone 10 is a failure, or that it's going to be a failure, or Apple is losing ground, or anything except the fact that Apple is the most successful company on the freaking planet is a moron.
Yeah, well, and we've said this for years. At some point, they're going to be right about something. We just don't know what it is or when. So I don't doubt that at some point in the future that iPhone sales will slow down, just like iPod sales did. I mean, we couldn't imagine for years that iPod sales would ever slow down, but they did. And, part of that was the fact that the iPhone came built in with an iPod.
Sure.
But look how that did. Now that took off. So, there's a lot of factors that go into this, but to say that, I mean, if you can say that first time buyers, that market is maturing because of, the strength of a certain population, I mean, you would have to look at all the factors in there. Okay, well, then maybe I could buy that. Maybe not as many people were born on a certain year for when you would expect the first iPhone to be sold.
Yep.
But other than that, there's a lot of factors that go into a market besides first-time buyers. And like you said, that's Android users, that's people upgrading, people that lost a phone, people that just got a new job and have more disposable income now. I mean, the phone is the one thing that people use every single day.
Yes.
And, especially around big cities like San Francisco.
Yep. I
mean, a lot of those people don't even go buy cars anymore. They go buy gadgets and stuff instead because they don't need a car. So, I don't know. I don't buy into all that.
There was the story, I think about a week and a half ago, Amazon talking about how they now have 100 million subscribers to Amazon Prime. Apple has 240 million people subscribed to various services under Apple. 2.4 times bigger than Amazon. $9 billion in revenue in a quarter just from services.
Yeah, but if you look, I mean, I understand the number is big, but if you look at what people do with Amazon Prime, they could order hundreds of dollars at a time.
Sure.
Each person. So, the revenue from 100 million paid people, not only are they getting the paid stuff, but then they're buying shit from Amazon on top of that, which is even more than the paid subscription.
True.
So, Amazon is doing very well. Oh, speaking of that, we should talk about this because it just happened today. Did you see that Amazon put the brakes on its building?
I saw that.
Seattle?
I saw that headline. Explain to me why.
Okay, so this I think is very interesting. So, Amazon's based in Seattle.
Yes.
So they employ a ton of people up there, and they're building. I don't know if they're building this building, if they actually tore one down and they're building it or renovating it. Anyway, they had architects, they had construction. They were going on this building on this thing, going to create another 7,000 or 8,000 jobs in Seattle.
Yes. The
city council said that they were going to put in a tax of $500 per employee on Amazon. Mm-hmm. Well, they didn't say Amazon, they said big business.
Yes.
Big businesses, $500 per employee tax, additional tax, to help the homeless and things like that. So Amazon announced this morning that they stopped construction of this big building, and that if the tax goes through, they'll sublease the property. They won't bring the jobs to Seattle because they won't pay that tax.
Do you think that's a valid threat on their part, that that's justified for them to make that threat? You said in the Loop story, Amazon has drawn a line in the sand and is sending a clear message to Seattle City Hall: approve this tax and we're out. Is that fair for Amazon, or should they stick it out and pay their fair share of taxes, if not more?
Well, no, I think they are paying their fair share of taxes. I don't know, but I do believe that they're serious, and that they have drawn this line in the sand. Like, we pay taxes. So if you want to add another $500 a head because we're creating jobs in the city, then we're not doing it. We'll take those jobs somewhere else.
It would be a payroll tax that Amazon would pay of around $75 million per year. The revenue is earmarked for homeless services and affordable housing. See, I think that's the problem. If the money is going to a quote-unquote good cause, it makes Amazon look bad to say we're not paying into that good cause fund.
Well, I mean, Amazon is a business. They're not a charity.
True.
So,
but they also have a corporate responsibility to the community that they're in.
I think Amazon has a financial responsibility to its owners, to whatever. They have a financial responsibility. As a society, we have a responsibility to help homeless and things like that. If I'm not convinced that any government doesn't waste a lot of money.
Oh, absolutely.
So instead of wasting that money, why don't you look inward and save some of that money and put that towards the homeless? Now, I'm not saying, especially on the West Coast, homeless is a big problem.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I agree that something has to be done. But if they keep taxing, Amazon and places like that. Now, to be clear, the city council didn't single out Amazon. They said big businesses. Amazon knows that they're pointing at them.
Yeah, Microsoft's going to have to pay the same tax.
Right. So it's not just Amazon. So, but Amazon said, "Whoa, that's it." we're done here.
How about this in light of that statement? Jeff Bezos was interviewed by somebody and asked what it's like. What does money mean for you, being the first person in history who has a net worth of a 3-digit amount of billions? Mark Bezos is worth approximately $131 billion, yes, billion dollars. And Bezos had the weirdest quote I've ever heard from someone in this position. He says, and I quote, "The only way that I can see to deploy this much financial resource is by converting my Amazon winnings into space travel. That is basically it. I am liquidating $1 billion a year of his Amazon stock to fund Blue Origin, his space travel company." I could not find that statement to be more offensive if I tried, and yet you telling me that Amazon's going to leave the city of Seattle, where they were founded and originate, for a quote-unquote measly $75 million, when Bezos can't find a way to spend $131 billion, that to me is incredible.
Okay, but you can't put the two of those things together, I don't think. If Jeff Bezos wants to donate money to the city of Seattle and donate $1 billion to help with homeless, then he can do that. If Tim Cook wants to do the same thing in San Francisco, he can do that. But to come to a business and say, hey, you're rich, we're going to tax you $75 million so that you can help pay for a societal problem, well, I don't know that that's really fair. Because then you're punishing the companies that are bringing jobs to your city and to your area for something that's not really their fault. And I understand that there's ties to when a company comes and areas grow up and all of that stuff. I understand all that, but they're already paying taxes, I assume. And I assume that they're being, and all the employees that they have are paying taxes.
Sure.
And, everybody is paying taxes because they have the money. And they have the money because Amazon is there.
But I think my point is, if Bezos says he can't think of any other way to spend his Amazon winnings, which is a really weird way of putting it, this is a way he could spend those winnings. $75 million to a guy who's worth $131 billion is pocket change, literally pocket change. So he could say, as a rich guy, don't worry about it, I'll cover that.
Okay, but so could Steph Curry. So could LeBron James. So could Rupert Murdoch.
Yep.
So could, every other rich person in America, if they donated $1 million, we'd have more than this, and they wouldn't even miss it.
Yeah.
Some of them could donate $1 billion and not miss it.
That's right.
So I just think that if we look at this without the heart and say, yes, these people need to be helped, all I'm saying is that you can't force a company to say, we're going to charge you extra because we have a problem in our city. Well, that's not Amazon's problem. If you don't want the jobs, then that's fine. We'll go somewhere else. Somebody else wants them.
I think you've lost your good Nova Scotia roots. Your good Canadian socialist roots. You become a hard-ass, hardcore capitalist down there in California, and it's really sad. I miss the old Jim.
No, I would have said this before, too.
I know, well, that's because you used to drive a Lexus. That's why. You've always been rich.
If you come to all of the rich people and say, we would like you to donate $1 million, and they did, then great. Why not go to all the rich people in Seattle? There's a ton of them.
Yep.
And say, this is what we would like you to do to fix the problem. Now, if that government is like most other governments, they'd spend it on, golden shovels and everything instead of actually fixing things. But
let's move on. You said Apple told you that they're discontinuing the Apple Airport base station products. Is this a mistake by Apple not discontinuing it now, but not developing the product in the past? Our friend Peter Cohen wrote an interesting story on his website about why Apple was doing this. And to me, it seems like Apple, I was there, like you, in 1999, when Apple first announced the iBook and announced this new wireless technology, Wi-Fi, and had, and as far as I remember, shoved Phil Schiller off a stage. I'm not quite sure what happened. Schiller was pushed off like a 100-foot cliff with an iBook, and no, I'm kidding, he wasn't. But it was a really cool demonstration of the iBook and a wireless. And Apple owned that space for a very long time. And a lot of us hope that Apple would sort of do a digital hub kind of thing around the airport, around the base station, around the Apple TV. So that became like a home server. There was all kinds of nerds who thought up various ideas of how Apple could make this device be their entry into your home. And none of it ever came to fruition. So it's understandable that Apple is no longer interested in this kind of stuff. As people point out, everyone gets a Wi-Fi modem with their ISP nowadays. But with mesh networking and all the other kind of stuff that's going on, did Apple miss an opportunity here?
I don't know if they really missed an opportunity or not. I mean, yeah, they let it languish for years, doing the odd update to it. But I think when Apple first released the airport, it was as much for the ease of use as anything.
Yep.
Because back in those days, you had to actually log into a web admin to administer your type in an IP address.
Oh, it was a nightmare.
Local, get in, and it was difficult to set up.
Yep.
And the language was awful, and you had to try and do firmware
Yep.
updates,
Oh,
which
God,
was
yeah.
awful. And so you had all of this stuff, and Apple just said, "Okay, we can make a difference
Yep.
here. We can, wrelease this, have a little app, and push updates and all that kind of stuff." And they did, and it worked wonderfully.
It was like magic.
But it was. And they said, "Oh, now you can extend your network by buying another one, and it'll extend your Wi-Fi network, and it's easy to set up." Although there were problems with that, but it was basically easy to set up.
Yeah.
But now you have mesh networks, and they're even easier to set up. I mean, that Google one that I had was just a breeze.
Yeah.
There was no problem at all setting that one up. So the advantage that Apple had is now not only gone, but they've been surpassed. And yes, that's part of because they didn't develop it. And maybe if they had, they would have, still been selling a lot of airports.
Yep.
But I stopped using mine, and I think a lot of people have.
Yep, me too.
Especially with a mesh network, So I don't think that airport networking is where Apple's focus is.
Yeah.
It's on the iPhone, and it should be on the iPhone. They have to go where the money is. And I think if there's an opportunity in the future where Apple can make networking better again, if people stop innovating, then they probably will. But with Google involved and with Eero involved and with, some of these other companies that are doing this involved in mesh networking and everything that comes after that, I don't think that Apple could reasonably stay on top of what these other companies are doing. And I don't think that they need to or want to.
Yes, I was about to say exactly that. That's what I think it is that Apple has often said that we say no 1,000 times for every yes. They're just saying no to this. This is a technology that went as far as it could at Apple. It had no champion in the company. Tim Cook wasn't not a fan of it, but there wasn't one person who could push this stuff forward, and it really wasn't needed in the form that Apple was presenting it. They just didn't see any need to go forward and innovate around it. It's a shame because it was one of the easiest things I'd ever set up for friends and family. And when someone back in the day said, what kind of router should I get? It was always an airport base station because you're not a nerd. You're not a nerd who needs to figure this stuff out, because back in those days, it was a stone cold nightmare trying to set up a modem or a router. Now they're almost no-brainers. So unless Apple was willing to innovate in the space, there was no point in them continuing to sell it.
when I set up my Google one, I plugged the first one in. I opened the app. It recognized that it was plugged in and said, "Hey, do you want to set this up?" Yes. Okay, setting up. Hey, do you want to add another one? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And it did that. You want to add another one? Yes, I do. And it added that.
Yep.
And it meshed them all together. And it's a better network than what an extender like the Wi-Fi base station could ever do.
Yes.
It's a faster network.
Yep.
So, if Apple did come out with a mesh network, I would certainly give it a try.
Mm-hmm.
But they would have to match what Google and Eero and all of these companies are doing.
And I think they would, but I don't think they have any interest in doing it whatsoever.
Exactly.
There's absolutely no impetus in the company to. There's a lot of old timers who say, "Well, Apple invented this; they should." No. Just because they didn't invent it, by the way. Just because Apple popularized it doesn't mean they need to push it forward ad infinitum. It's been 20 years. Wi-Fi, the airport base station stuff has been around for 20 years. I had one of the original spaceship ones, and it was kind of cool and funky. People come in your house and go, "What the hell's that? Why is there a UFO on top of your counter?"
Yeah. And it was great.
Yep.
And it was great while it lasted. I still have two of them. One regular base station and one time machine,
Yep.
Or time capsule.
Yeah.
And they're great, but you don't get the speed that you do from a mesh network. You don't get, I don't know. I gave up on them.
Yeah, if it was one of those technologies that Apple let go by the wayside, they signaled they were going to do this 2 years ago. We knew this was happening. This is not a big surprise to anyone. No. It is a one small tiny tear rolled down my cheek when I first heard of it because I remember the good old days. But then I also remembered I haven't actually used mine in probably 4 years. So,
yeah.
Oops. Folks, been talking to Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. He's here each and every week. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Shawn.
Talk to you next week, buddy. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you very much to Jim for doing that pre-recorded so we could go off and watch his hockey game. Hopefully, again, his Bruins have lost miserably.
So the LA Kings are no more. They're called the Golden Knights. What is that?
No, whole different team in Las Vegas.
Oh, I didn't even know. That's how out of touch I am with hockey.
Yes, that whole brand new team has been put together in Las Vegas, and it's interesting because it's an expansion team. Expansion teams usually suck.
And are they good?
They're apparently
in the playoffs. They're
in the playoffs, so they're better than the fucking Canucks. That's for sure.
Well. Mm-hmm.
In our starting point photography segment, we got a question from a listener, Paul, and Paul sent me an email saying, "Is it logical for me to buy an 18-300mm lens for my DSLR?" Logical is a funny way to put that, Paul. I would say no. If one of the problems I have, and this is completely a personal opinion, so keep that in mind, you'll see quite often in Best Buy and on cheap places these camera lenses that got this wide range, all the way down from 18mm, which is generally considered a wide-angle lens, to 300, 400, which is considered to be a telephoto zoom lens. And you think, that's fantastic. I can shoot wide. I can shoot long. This is great. I've always found that the more range there is in the lens, the less quality that lens is. 18-300mm lenses are generally fairly inexpensive, say under $1,000. I've seen some for under $600. That, to me, for a lens with that much range on it, says it's an inexpensive, if not cheap, lens. Cheap, I mean by quality. What I tell people when they ask about lenses is figure out or find out what kind of photographer you are or what kind of photographer you want to be, and then buy the lens that suits that kind of photography. And what I mean by that is every kind of lens has a specific subject matter that's best for shooting. So, here it is. So this, for example, is the Olympus. That's not the one. Sorry. This is the one. This is the Olympus 9-18 millimeter lens. It's a very, very small, tiny little lens. That 9 to 18 range tells me this is a wide angle lens, so it goes from 9 millimeters to 18 millimeters. Very, very wide angle lens. And what this is good for shooting is things like landscape or architecture or things that you want to get a lot in the frame. It's got no zoom. At 8 millimeters, 18 millimeters is nothing when it comes to zoom. So if you're trying to shoot wildlife, you don't shoot with this kind of lens. This is the lens when you want to shoot landscape photos, mountain ranges, or cityscapes. You want to get a whole waterfront in view. You would use that kind of lens. Then you would have another lens like, where's my lens? Oh, here's one. This lens, also an Olympus, this is a 12 to 40 millimeter lens. Now, this is a really good, high quality. This one's a cheap plastic one. This is a high quality, but it's still 12 to 40 millimeters. So it's still a fairly wide angle lens, but it's a higher quality lens. This lens is probably less than $300. This lens is $1,000. Even though they cover approximately the same kind of range, because it's a higher quality lens, higher quality glass, higher quality body. This is a plastic body. This is an all metal body. The lens elements are going to be a higher quality glass than this one. This is a more expensive lens. Where are my other lenses? Here we've got another lens from Olympus. This is the 75 to 300 millimeter lens. This lens is designed for zooming in. 75 millimeters, if I tried to shoot Melissa right now at 75 millimeters, I could not get a good image of her face. I'd probably get your eye and your nose, because 75 millimeters is very, very, very narrow. So it reaches out and I can't get your whole body. A 75 millimeter lens.
Far away, right?
I have to move backwards or you have to go somewhere. 75 to 300. 300 means it's a zoom lens. This is a great lens for wildlife. When I go out in the woods, when I go out for example, the Bald Eagle Festival that we have here around here every October, we can't physically get very close to the bald eagles, but I will take this lens. It's a 300 millimeter zoom lens, and I can shoot a bald eagle and get good shots from a quarter mile away. So that's what this lens is for. It's for wildlife. It's for long distance. When I go to the horse racing track and want to shoot all the way down the track to get all the way to the end of the track and get the horses coming around the turn, this is a great lens for that kind of thing. The lens I've got mostly on my camera, on my D600, is a 24-120. So that's a good range. From 24 millimeters, which is fairly wide, to 120, which is a decent amount of zoom. That's the kind of photographer I am. This is the lens that's on my camera 99% of the time, because it's the kind of shooting I do. I don't need a 300 millimeter lens on this camera, because that's not the kind of shooting I do. So if I was thinking of buying an 18 to 300 millimeter lens, that'd be pointless, because I don't shoot that wildlife stuff. I don't shoot that stuff off in the distance. So you got to know what you're liable to be shooting before you buy the lens. I've got somewhere around here, I think it's, here we go. Yes. So, for example, say you were a photographer who loved shooting portraits. That's the kind of photographer you were. You like shooting people. You like shooting people's faces, posed photos, family, friends, that kind of stuff. You'd get a 75 millimeter lens, because this is a great lens for portrait shooting. Between 75, 85, 120 millimeters is a really good lens for taking pictures of people's faces. Interestingly enough, it's not one of the small lenses, because if you tried to shoot someone a portrait shot with one of these 9 to 18 lenses, it would distort someone's face. So you'd have to get very, very close in order to shoot them. And because of the way these lenses work, it would just make their nose look really, really big and flatten out their face. So you wouldn't do portrait shooting with one of these lenses. The 75 millimeter lens is a prime lens. There's no zoom on it. So if you want to get closer, you've got to physically move closer. When you get further away, you've got to physically move further away. This is the lens. I don't know if you remember, Melissa. We went out shooting one day, and you were getting really, really frustrated not being able to get good shots. I put this lens on, and you got what you thought were some great shots of me because you were shooting a portrait of me with a portrait lens.
Yes.
You were shooting the lens dedicated to the thing that you were shooting. And because you were doing that, you were helping the camera take better images of the thing. This wouldn't have been a good lens to shoot landscape. It wouldn't have been a good lens to shoot wildlife that was a long distance away. It wouldn't have been a good lens to shoot things that were close up, inside, say, 2 feet. But you were using this lens for what it was designed for, which is portrait work, and you were getting good images with it. So an 18-300 millimeter lens sounds like it gives you a wide range, but the quality of the images you're going to get is not going to be as good as if you got a lens that was dedicated to the kind of shooting that you want to do. So if you like shooting people's faces, portraits, get a portrait lens. If you like shooting landscapes, get a landscape lens. If you like shooting wildlife, get a wildlife lens. For me, when I'm shooting things that are moving fast, I use my 50 millimeter lens because that's a 1.8 millimeter lens. Sorry, f-stop of 1.8, which is considered to be a very, very fast lens. So you buy the lens that suits the kind of shooting you're going to do, and try not to get distracted by a sale. Oh, it's only $400. Well, a $400 shitty lens is going to give you're going to spend $400 on taking shitty photos. You're going to have to work a lot harder in the editing in order to make those photos good. And I would say don't do that. I would say that's just not a great thing to do. What's that? Yeah, MacMan says most 18-300 suck. There's the short version. It's just true. It's just no way around it. That huge range that you're trying to get on that lens sounds like a good deal, but in fact, I guarantee you it's not going to be a good lens, and you're not going to get the shots that you think you're going to want to be able to get with that one. MacMan says, usually, to be honest, I've got a 28-200 on my camera, unless my nephew's around. Even then, it's my 18-55 or 12-24. But that's the key. Know what the lenses do, and then shoot to what the lens will do. This 50 millimeter lens, I wouldn't use this for wide angle shots. This is my street photography shot lens. This is my lens for shooting in dark conditions, in sunset, that kind of stuff. So I have the lens I need for the situation I want to shoot in. So keep that in mind. If you're unsure, send me an email. As always, I'm happy to get emails from you guys about this stuff. So if you're wondering about a lens or what a lens is good for, the next question people always ask me is, how do I know which lens I should get? And the thing for me is, look at the photos you've already taken. Look at your Instagram feed. Look at your Flickr feed. Look at the places where you posted pictures, Facebook, and see what kind of shots you've taken. If most of your shots are of your dog running around in the park, well, then you want a lens that will allow you to take action shots. If most of your shots are buildings or landscape, well, then buy a lens that has landscape. If most of your shots are people's faces, then buy a portrait lens. So buy the lens that matches what you want to shoot, but also matches what you have been shooting, because your camera roll will tell you what you like to shoot. I look at my camera roll on my iPhone, and I know I like to shoot people. That's really obvious to me. Most of my shots have got people in them. Most of them have got someone's face in them. So that's why I would get for me, a portrait lens. The other thing I get asked a lot about are lenses for your iPhone or for any camera phone. Should you get them? Generally, I say no. There are two that I would say yes to: the Moment lenses and the Olo Clip. Olo Clip ones are cheaper. Moment lenses are more high quality. The problem is, as we've said before, the photography is the act of gathering light. We don't shoot pictures of dark, we shoot pictures of light. So you want a lens that gathers as much light as you need to create the image that you want. Well, as I've always shown, there is your iPhone lens that gathers light, and there is your DSLR that gathers light. Obviously, the DSLR gathers much, much more light, magnitudes more light than your iPhone. And the problem is, when you start sticking lenses over your iPhone lens, you can potentially be blocking light. Especially if you see any set of lenses for under $25, you're wasting $25. Send that $25 to me, because you're going to waste it on covering up your iPhone. That's going to be a shitty quality lens. It's going to be probably a plastic lens. It's going to be not ground well. It's going to be a plastic housing. It's just going to be a complete waste of time. In order to get good images from your iPhone, you're going to spend at least $100 on maybe one or two lenses. That's from Olympus or Moment. I wouldn't recommend any other company, any other company's lenses except for those two. And that being said, I don't have other lenses on my iPhone. I've tested out the Moment ones. I've tested out the Olympus ones. They're okay. But for me, when I need to use a separate lens for whatever reason it might be, telephoto or macro, whatever it is, I've got a DSLR to do that with. I don't use my iPhone in those kind of specialized lens situations where I would need this. Plus, the iPhone X, it's zoom, it's using the 2 times lens to the, using the telephoto lens on the iPhone is really, really good. I'm surprised at how good the telephoto lens is. And I use the telephoto lens probably for about half of my shots on the iPhone. And that's all I really need. I don't take macro shots. I don't need a macro lens. Fisheye is just a gimmick. I don't care about fisheye. The only kind of fancy shooting I use is 360 VR type lens, and that's a whole separate camera. I don't even use a lens for that. So I don't bother with those kinds of external lenses for my devices. Monty says, there are enough of those. What kind of lens should I use for X questions? Maybe an interview one night with someone from one of the big lens rental places and see if they're willing to give the show some discount codes to give away. The biggest lens rental company that I recommend is Lens Pro to Go, also lensrentals.com. Both are really good companies. I gotta find a place to put this damn thing. Both really good companies that I've used in the past. If someone has specific questions that the lens rental guys could answer, then yeah, let me know and I will pass those along to them. So we were talking, Jim and I were talking about the Amazon thing. We got an interesting discussion with our friend Monty in oh, sorry, Monty, you said that to me privately. My apologies, Monty. And we disagreed with Monty on it. Basically, the idea is, Monty is saying, and Monty, if I'm mischaracterizing you, please let me know. Basically, the idea is that Monty doesn't believe that the government should use its power to force corporations to not assist, but to contribute to solving these kinds of societal issues. And we disagree with him on that. Why?
Well, I said to Monty, I understand that feeling that the government shouldn't be policing it. I get that. I wrote back to him and said I wished that these huge corporations would do it spontaneously and naturally and consider it part of their duty to contribute to the community in any way, shape, or form.
That was the argument I was having with Jim, is that I believe that corporations should feel that duty to their own community.
Yes.
That, like you said, they should be doing this stuff voluntarily.
Yeah.
No, corporations, it's not their job to fix society's ills.
No, but
they're the ones making the money from society.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially when you have a company, and like I said in the interview with Jim, with Jeff Bezos saying, I can't think of ways to spend $131 billion.
Space.
Fuck you.
Yeah, no, that was kind of he's just, it's very indulgent and
it was a weird thing to say in a weird way to say it that I can't think of any. I mean, I think it would come across better if he had said, "This is my life's goal, is to get men into space. And I'm going to spend all my money doing this." Okay, that would have been different.
Yeah.
The line of him saying, "I don't know how to spend all this money," makes me want to punch him in the throat. Hey, here's an idea, Jeff. Pay your employees more.
Yeah, treat them better.
Treat them better. Just give them more
Same
wages.
with Walmart.
There's how to spend some of your money.
Yeah, I go along with that.
Part of my problem is I'm socialist enough to believe that Jeff Bezos should not be worth $131 billion fucking dollars.
Nobody
That's
should
obscene.
be worth that much money.
That's obscene that he is worth that kind of money. That he has access to that level of wealth, which is more than the gross domestic product of some countries. That to me is, and then to have that obscene amount of wealth in the hands of someone who says, "I don't know how to spend it," makes you want to just vomit.
Well, even calling it winnings, you can see where his frame of mind
It's not
is.
winnings.
No.
It's profit you took from customers.
People, yeah.
And granted, you made that profit fair and square, but you also made that profit on the backs of a certain number of your workers who are working for about minimum wage in very, very difficult conditions in your warehouses. You have decimated entire industries because of Amazon.com. And that's okay from that point of view. That's competition. That's capitalism. That's what we're here for. If they couldn't compete, then you know, if you can't hang with the big dog, get off the porch kind of thing. Okay, I get that. But in the process of decimating small towns, small stores, small grocery stores, small bookstores, all that kind of stuff, you got to be willing to give some of that back. Yeah. You can't just hoard it. You're not Smog sitting on a giant pile of money and just hoarding it. Find things to do with it. And one of the things you could do is voluntarily spend $75 million, which is nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing for a guy worth $131 billion to pay this tax for the city of Seattle so they can help people, the homeless. Yeah. And Jim's argument of, well, the government's just going to waste it. Yeah, the government's going to waste it. Of course they are. They're governments. But I'd rather have the government have the money and waste some of it than not have it at all and homeless people die.
Yeah, well, he could also play a role in what he wants done with the money, couldn't he?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like, okay, I'll do this, but we're going to sit on a board and figure out how we're going to make a homeless community or whatever. With
$131 billion, you could build a homeless city.
Yeah, and make it great and set an example, and yeah, it would be incredible.
I think setting an example is really interesting. Monty, he says, but a corporation's duty is to its shareholders, not to societal causes. Certainly not being forced into giving corporate money to causes. If he says he doesn't know how to spend it, then someone should suggest to him they look into helping various charities. But being forced to by some politician's current pet cause, I can't get behind that, which has nothing to do with how I feel about homelessness. I understand that.
I do understand.
No one's
that as
accusing you of being
not caring about the homeless. No.
But in the example I used with Jim in the interview, Apple didn't have to make its company run on sustainable energy. No one was demanding Greenpeace, but no one else was demanding Apple do this. Apple didn't have to make its packaging environmentally friendly. Apple doesn't have to get behind LGBTQ rights and issues. Those are all societal issues. Apple's choosing to do this for possibly the political leanings of its CEO. Okay, I'm fine with that. Mm-hmm. But I believe that corporations who take so much out of the society, the community, the culture we're in, should feel the responsibility to give some of it back. And if they don't, then we're going to take it from you.
Yeah.
That's, again, the socialist in me. I will be completely cop to that.
You decide what you're going to do. I mean, people could, I don't know if they could put it out there to their customers, do a survey. What would you like this money to go to in your community? Would you like it? Give them a choice. Homelessness. It could be a few different things. Put it out there to people and see what they say.
Scott Thrift says, I agree, Monty. It's not the role of government to dictate how people spend their money. but I think that a philanthropic program is good for all involved. People, such as the homeless, get the services they need, and the companies and people get the publicity they need. And the flow back of people choosing to support a company that supports the community. The problem is companies generally will not be philanthropic unless forced to.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of corporations.
Or unless there's some sort of a benefit for them from it.
Well, the definition of philanthropy is you don't get a benefit. You're doing it because out of the goodness of your heart, not expecting anything back.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of people aren't philanthropic.
No.
The vast majority of people don't donate or give to causes or volunteer or things like that. But I think that companies like this have a higher calling than just being forced to do it by the government. They should do it voluntarily, and if you're not willing to do it voluntarily, then we're going to take it. That's where the money is.
Yeah.
It's either we tax Amazon, which has the money, or we're going to tax middle class people who don't have the money. I'd much rather you tax Amazon than tax me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to still support. I support Amazon. I buy from Amazon.
Monty, that kind of money given to private charity would end up with far more of the money directly benefiting the target cause than taken by the government and misuse. That's a bullshit excuse.
Well,
I'm sorry,
some
Monty.
charities. I don't
Exactly.
know about all charities.
Exactly. Some charities misuse, and some government programs are 100% effective.
Yeah,
You can't use that as an excuse not to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, the government might lose some of it. Well, guess what? The government loses money all the time.
Yeah.
That's not the reason why you don't do something.
No.
It's because it might get misused.
They might not use it efficiently. Yeah.
And there's lots of charities who I mean, the Salvation Army is a perfect charity that gets so much publicity that should not get a dime of your money because they are literally against the homosexual community, against the LGBTQ community. They won't allow them to serve, to volunteer. They won't allow them to be involved in their services. So fuck the Salvation Army.
Yeah.
It's a great charity. Everyone thinks the little guy ringing the bell on the Christmas time, here's $5. No bullshit. So don't talk to me about charities that do good things, because some of the charities are full of shit.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's an interesting subject.
It is. It is absolutely an interesting subject. Folks, thanks very much for Monty. Thank you for your thoughts. Scott Thrift, same to you. If you have any thoughts with us, please send us emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com or Shawn@yourmaclifeshow.com. I'd love to keep discussing this with you guys, what you think about this kind of stuff. And like I said, I completely admit my bias as being Canadian and wanting to have the big giant pool of money that we all pay into. Some people have to take more of that, or give more into it than others. So, got an email from our friend Roddy Paws. He says, Twitter client recommendation. Roddy Paws says, I had been using the official Twitter client for the Mac until the day it stopped working. I'm one of the few who liked and preferred it and would still be using it now. I would like to find a client that's as close to it as possible. I have been trying Twitterific and I really don't like it at all. Unfortunately, it was not free. Which client would you recommend? I have the official iOS client still, but I rarely use Twitter on my phone. Unfortunately, Roddy Paws, I use Twitterific, and I like Twitterific, so I really can't give you advice on a desktop client for Twitter. There's Tweetbot, but it also costs. If anyone has any advice for Roddy Paws, please let me know what you guys think is a good free desktop Twitter client, and I'll pass that on to Roddy Paws. But like I said, I like Twitterific. I love Twitterific. Twitterific to me is one of the top two, it and Tweetbot, clients for Twitter. For me, I like Twitterific because of its mute and muffle features, that I can muffle specific words on Twitter, which is fantastic. If someone starts ranting about something, I can muffle their rant. Perfect example would be, during the Olympics, I could muffle the word Olympics so that when someone mentioned it, I wouldn't see that tweet. I would still see that they had tweeted something about the Olympics, but I wouldn't see the actual tweet. It would just,
you didn't want to know results.
Exactly.
Of things?
Exactly. I didn't want to know about news or results or that kind of stuff. I've got a Twitter, a Twitterific muffle on NHL playoffs or Stanley Cup or that kind of, because I don't want to know the results. On the weekends, I'll turn on a muffle feature for F1 or MotoGP for motorcycle racing, so I don't have to see those kinds of things. So for me, I really like it. So I'm sorry you don't like it, Roddy Paws, but let's see if we can't find another client for you. Like I said, folks, if you have any comments about that, please send us to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com, and I will pass it on to Roddy Paws. MacFoo, who I don't think is in the IRC chat room, donated from Christopher Bross Photography. Hey, Shawn, just wanted to throw a little love your way. Best regards, MacFoo. He gave us a $25 donation on PayPal. Thank you very much for that, MacFoo. I appreciate that. It's just that easy. You can just go to the website at yourmaclifeshow.com and randomly donate 10, 15, 20 bucks, whatever you like.
Why not?
Excellent. Excellent question. Why not indeed?
Why not?
There was there was a story here that I wanted to point out. There will likely not be any iPhone price cuts. This goes along with the story that people have been reporting for the past 2 months that the iPhone X wasn't popular, that Apple was about to discontinue it, and therefore some people thought, well, then Apple's going to lower the price. Guess what, kids? If you've been holding off on not buying an iPhone X because you think the price is going to go down, it ain't happening. Apple announced yesterday that not only did they sell 52 million iPhones in the past 3 months, but that the iPhone X was the #1 selling iPhone every single week of the past 3 months. And that's unusual because it's the most expensive phone that they sell. Usually, the lower tier ones sell more than the highest one.
Yeah.
So Apple's making money hand over fist with the iPhone X. They ain't discontinuing it. They might change the name, but the iPhone X is around and going to be around for a while. A Redditor, I saw this question on Reddit. Should they get an iPhone 8 Plus or a professional camera to jump into photography? The first question everyone asks is, what kind of photography do you want? Are you want to be a professional photographer? Do you want to, what kind of photography do you like? If you like taking pictures of flowers, then the iPhone's going to be fine. If you want to take pictures of race cars going by, the iPhone will not do for that. If you want to take pictures of the moon, the iPhone isn't going to do very good with that. If you want to take your pictures and sell them to a magazine, probably not the iPhone. But if you're just the average person wanting to take normal everyday photos, any iPhone, along with the associated software, will be a fantastic camera for you. Snapseed, which we all love. Halid, if you want to get fancy. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of really good iPhone photography apps that you can use to take your photographs. I'm going to do a little bit more research on that question to find out if it's more specific. But don't think you need a DSLR, a big fancy DSLR camera. If you don't want to be professional, then don't get a professional camera. If you like your iPhone and you like the pictures you're already getting with your iPhone, then stick with your iPhone. I think that's it. I think we're done.
Okay.
You okay with that? Oh, you know what we've been doing? We've been making pasta.
Making it the pasta.
The hell?
No,
That was a bit offensive.
it was not.
It was. What are you doing an Indian accent for?
People do Australian accents all the time.
That was
Okay,
Indian, though.
moving on, Mr. King.
That was an Indian
It
accent.
was not.
What accent was it?
Forget it.
What accent was it?
We've been making pasta.
What accent was it?
It was supposed to be Italian.
Fucking terrible.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. World Traveler. I've been to Italy, and you do an Italian accent.
I'm teasing you. I just wanted to get that joke in. Yeah, we've been having an absolute blast. We saw it's all from that video that we saw, how to make 29 different kinds of pasta. I don't remember the guy's name, but it was just a freaking amazing. We're literally watching this in bed. It's 20 minutes of video of a guy making pasta. You'd think it's like, geez, do you two need a life? You know, have sex, do something else, right?
I know, it's great.
But it was brilliant.
It was.
I loved watching it.
Very good.
And we were like, we could do that.
Yeah.
It
well,
looked pretty easy. We could do that.
I know we could do the way he does it.
Certainly couldn't do it the way he did it. But so we decided to start this. So we went out and we bought a pasta maker. And they're simple machines. They're really easy to use. And we went through, I think, 3 or 4 different dough recipes, pasta dough recipes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We've hit upon the perfect for us dough recipe is 2/3 a cup of flour,
Mm-hmm.
1 room temperature egg, a drizzle of olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
Done. That's it.
It's beautiful.
That's the ingredients you need
And
to
we
make.
don't have like a mixer thing. Like we're just.
It's all done by
doing
hand,
it like
too.
with pioneer people.
Yep, that's it's like peasants.
Like peasants.
That's all you need to make your own food. Seriously, that's all you need to make your own frickin' food. We have made ravioli twice.
Yeah.
We have made fettuccine twice. The fettuccine I made tonight.
Oh, so good.
Literally 2:00 this afternoon, I decided I'm going to make fettuccine.
Yeah.
And flour, egg, olive oil, mixy, pasta maker, roly, fettuccine.
Beautiful.
Took an hour, and it was fun.
Yeah.
Boil it up with, and this the other thing too is, I don't know why this was true. It's the very first time in my life, literally in my life, I've intentionally made a vegetarian meal. We had creamy mushroom fettuccine.
Oh, it's delicious.
It was
So good.
no meat.
So good. No.
Who knew?
Oh,
Who knew you could make?
I didn't know
Good
that was
food.
so unusual for you.
Why is there so much noise in the background?
I don't know.
There's really a lot of weird noise going on. Anyway, so yeah, it was just a shitload of mushrooms, cream, butter, salt. That was it.
I think we're going to save money making pasta. Seriously.
I mean, we use so little, relatively little flour, and flour you can buy in a 20-pound bag for $10.
Yeah.
Eggs, not a problem.
Yeah.
It's fun too. I think for me that's the key. I'm not saving money. It's just fun to make the pasta. We bought an inexpensive $60 pasta maker that supposedly makes a bunch of different kinds of pasta. It doesn't shit for making the other ones. But it's fine for making, rolling out the pasta dough very, very thinly. And then the fettuccine came out really nice.
Oh, it's so good. We'll try lasagna next.
Monty says there's a Good Eats episode of making homemade pasta. I'll check that out, Monty. Thank you very much. I will definitely check that out. But if you make your own pasta, let us know. Do you have a recipe? Different dough recipe? Because right now the basic one we've got. The other thing we're going to try is putting seasoning or putting herbs in the dough. Which I think would be kind of. Once you roll it out, you fold it in half. You sprinkle like rosemary into your dough, fold it in half, and roll it again. And now you've compressed rosemary or thyme or whatever it is into your pasta.
I guess you could do that with Parmesan cheese too, couldn't you?
I don't know if you could because I think the cheese, when it boiled, would get gummy.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, dinner time. Yes, dinner time.
Lamb burgers. Ooh, yummy. That's it for us tonight. Show for tonight. That is it. Sorry, I had a brain cramp there. That's it for tonight's show, folks. I want to say thank you guys very much for joining us here on the show. Thanks for our friend Jim Dalrymple of the Loop at loopinsight.com for joining us, even if it was this afternoon. Hopefully his Bruins failed miserably in their quest for the playoffs. I'm sorry, I'm a spiteful man. I just no way around it. As always, I've been Shawn King.
I'm Melissa King.
And you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!
Bye.